Thank you. Good morning. How are you all doing? It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. We are going through some really unprecedented times, and for us to wake up, see the sun, smell the roses, have a roof over our head, clothes on our back, food on the table, I can't help but be grateful. So, I'm going to be talking to you about excelling in crazy times. And we are really saying the times that we are going through are, by all accounts, unprecedented. I would like to make this an interactive presentation rather than a monologue. So at certain times, I'll be asking you to respond in different ways. I'm mindful of the time. I've been told that I should not speak later than 12:45. So I'll try and end the presentation part at least 10 minutes before 12:45. So about 12:35, and then reserve the last 10 minutes for discussion, question and answers, etc. So moving on, I've got a request, and here's my request. I want you to answer the question, so what? Because I believe that any presentation that you attend, whether it be part of this winter school or anywhere else, is useless, pointless, and a waste of your time and resources if it doesn't result in you taking at least one action. So as I present, I want you to ask yourself, so what? And ask yourself that question at a personal level. So what does this mean to me? What action will I take as a result of listening to what I'm hearing? So as I present, I would like you to decide on an action you will take as a result of attending this session. And if you can write that action down as we speak, all the better. Because by writing it down, you are achieving a certain level of commitment well above average. Then, at the end of the session, I would like you to rate this session. You give me either an A or an F. You can type that in the chat. You give me an A if you will take at least one action as a result of what I will have shared. Or you give me an F if you're not going to take an action, even after having shared what I will have shared. And at any time during the course of the presentation, please feel free to ask a question or comment. You can type in the chat. Alternatively, you can send me your question via WhatsApp to the number that's displayed there. So I hope you agree with me. That's the deal. So your part is to listen and see if there's any action you're likely to take. And at the end, if you're kind enough to just give me a rating, feedback, an A or an F, depending on whether or not you're going to take an action. So moving on. This is the agenda we will follow. I will talk about the harsh reality. It's just a reminder because we're all experiencing it right now. I will also talk about the impact of the developments that are happening. I listened in on the presentation pertaining to the mental wellness, and I must admit that, yeah, I totally agree. I too suffered COVID at the beginning of the year, and I lost some loved ones, and really, it is a matter to be dealt with, and coping mechanisms are required. We'll talk about motivation and action. What is motivation? After all, I've been engaged to give a motivational speech. So we'll talk a little bit about motivation and action. In fact, that is the core part of this presentation. And then we'll come back to the so what. Remember, we started with the so what. When I gave you that request, we'll come back to it. And then now, want to hear from you any action commitments in terms of what you're specifically going to do as a result of what we're sharing today. And then we'll have question and answer. How am I doing on time? I think so far so good. So here's the harsh reality. Look at that picture on your screens right now. That is unprecedented. That's one of the busiest highways in Dubai. And looking at that picture in the top left corner of your screen, you'll see that the streets are empty. I don't think in the history of Dubai there'd ever been a time when that street had been empty. And that's just showing us what is happening elsewhere in the rest of the world. We have got a situation where we have had lockdowns. Although the lockdowns are not as severe as they were when we started, it's still an issue, and it has an impact on our livelihoods, on our professions, on our careers, on our well-being. Oh, okay, I see. The screen is being shared for me. All right, no problem. So let me stop sharing my screen because I was sharing my screen here as well. If you look in the top right-hand corner, that also is a situation that has shaped our current realities. That is Black Lives Matter movement in the aftermath of the George Floyd case, and it brought chaos to the US. And in the bottom left-hand corner, that is the South African riots that occurred in the aftermath of the arrest of the former president Jacob Zuma. And that looks to me like a shopping mall that is on fire. Totally unprecedented. I've seen unrest in South Africa before, but nothing on the scale that we've seen. And finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a graph that probably the good doctor wouldn't have wanted me to share. That is a graph showing the COVID infections since COVID started last year. And as you can see, we had a peak around January this year, and right now we've been having a peak. It started to come down, and hopefully it's going to be a trend and it will continue coming down. So this is defining the harsh reality in which we are having to work, where we have no option but to survive. And I'm saying, instead of merely surviving, let us make a conscious decision to excel despite the challenges that we are facing. Easier said than done, I know, but at the end of the day, it's still a choice that is open to you. It is up to you whether you want to take it or not. So what has been the impact of all that is happening? If we look at the headlines, they speak stories. Here's a headline that says, hotels plead with government to review lockdown as, you can imagine what it says next. So clearly, we are having businesses that have been impacted and that continue to be impacted by the lockdown and by the measures that have been taken in order to control the spread of COVID. And some of you might be working in companies that have been affected one way or the other, affected by the unrest in South Africa, affected by the global slowdown in the economies of the world as the pandemic bites. NRZ revenues hard hit by COVID-19. Many companies are also suffering this. Okay, Zimbabwe sees 46% dip in profit. This is not from me, hey? This is all headlines that you can Google and find online. Zimbabwe students search for jobs that often no longer exist. So we find there's a scarcity of jobs. Whereas on the other hand, we also have employers who are saying they can't find the right people to fill in certain positions. So what do we need to do about this? So let me get to the meat, to the crux of what I want to share with you today. Let's talk about motivation and action. What is motivation? Motivation is an inner force that compels action. In other words, it's what you feel inside that drives you to take action. And if there's one thing that I've discovered in moments like this of uncertainty, in moments of challenges and difficulties, in moments that are unpredictable and unprecedented, the people who tend to put things together and get things happen are the people who've got a plan, who are motivated to do something. I think in this environment, if there's one expression, a tired expression that I can say is definitely true, is that an idle mind is a workshop for the devil. So when you've got an idle mind, your mind will tend to worry a lot more. When you occupy your mind with a plan, with a goal, with a sense of purpose, then you find your ability to cope with the external environment is much better because your internal environment is aligned. I hope you get what I'm saying. But let's go into this in a bit more detail. There are many sources of motivation, and I'm talking of inner force that compels action, an inner force that makes you act. You could look at your life and think about the things you have succeeded in, where you took action maybe against the odds and you achieved extraordinary success. What were the factors that pushed you to persevere? Look at those and you get to understand through that introspection. What are the factors that influence you? I want to talk about just three. Purpose. Now, purpose is a big major goal that you are pursuing. There are people who are motivated by purpose, where they will say, I've got a clear vision of what I want to achieve within the next 3 years, within the next 5 years, within the next 10 years, and they work tirelessly towards that. That gives them the fuel to push on despite any hurdles they might come across. They will continue to do it. Why? Because they've got this inner force driven towards purpose. In Shona, we say chinangwa, okay? Passion. There are people who are passion driven. Somebody could just have a passion for a certain cause. Maybe you've got a passion for the disabled or disadvantaged. Take Jairus Jeter, for example. He had a passion for those who are disabled, right? And he worked tirelessly for that. He basically dedicated his whole life to that. I can't imagine during his lifetime you'd meet him and he'll be complaining, oh, things are so hard. No, he'll be saying, you know what, the plan I have now is I want to build Naren Center in Gweru. I want to do this with the disabled. I want to do this in Bulawayo, because he's driven by this passion he has got, a burning desire for a certain cause. What is your passion? What are you passionate about? Now, this does not only help in terms of you achieving something worthwhile for humanity, for your community, for the country, but it helps for your mental well-being as well. So when you get that passion, when you tap into it, you are tapping into a powerful force, a powerful source of motivation, a compelling action, a compelling force that lets you take action. And finally, pragmatism. I've come across people who are not particularly passionate about something. Maybe, yeah, they are purposeful, but it's definitely not the strongest driving force inside of them. But they are really practical. They can look at a situation almost dispassionately and say, right, given this situation, what's my cost-benefit analysis? If I do this, maybe I'll experience momentary pleasure, but my future will be bleak. And they will make cold, calculated decisions of what is in their best interests based on the practical realities. They can see cause and effect, and as a result of that, they tend to make decisions that benefit them for the future. So think about these three. Which one would you say resembles your approach the closest? Which one is closest to your source of motivation? Are you more of a purpose-driven person, a passion-driven person, or a pragmatic or pragmatist, a person who's driven by pragmatism? You are not too passionate, you're not too fascinated about purpose, but you look in a logical, objective way at a situation and you decide the best course of action to take. So why am I sharing this with you? Because you excel when you tap into what you're strongest at. So if you're a strongly purposeful person, then tap into that purpose. If you're a passionate person, then take advantage of that passion. If you're a pragmatist, then make sure that you maximize on your pragmatism. That's why I'm sharing that with you. So what do you need to do? Here are some actions that you can take. Believe in what I call me private limited. You need to think like a consultant, act like a startup. What do I mean? A consultant can never afford, and I'm a consultant, I've been doing this since 2003, which is how many years? About 17 years, 18 years now. As a consultant, I have to continuously be on my feet because I am paid to provide value. The people who hire me, like ACCA, will not hire me next time if I don't give value. It doesn't matter whether my family is starving or whether I've got debts to pay. It doesn't matter, right? And it's not a job, so it's not a struggle that, oh, shall we fire this guy or not? So we just don't hire him. So as a consultant, you are continuously seeking ways of adding more value. You don't rest. You act like a startup. A startup is hungry. In your profession, in your career right now, how many of us have got this syndrome we used to call, when I was doing MBA at the University of Zimbabwe, we did queuing theory, and there was first in, first out, last in, first out. And we had something that we came up with, which is called first in, still here, where you're still there in the job just because, you know, you've been there and it's not nice to be firing people. But really, you're not adding significant value. If you look at how you have grown in the past year, even with all this COVID, perhaps we find your skills have not been greatly enhanced. Maybe other than being now able to use Teams and Zoom, there isn't much else to show. So as a consultant, you're continuously growing in your knowledge, in your skill, and ultimately in the value that you provide. As a startup, you are hungry to prove what you can do, right? You are never resting on your laurels. And why is this important? It's important because we're in a constantly changing environment, and the rate of change is rapidly increasing. So the only way you can remain relevant is to continue to provide increasing value despite the changes that are happening. I hope you get this. That's me private limited. You manage yourself as a company. You think like a consultant and you act like a startup. You need to be enterprising. Being enterprising is being innovative and resourcefulness. Innovative means you're coming up with new ideas that are useful and practical that you can implement in the workplace, that you can sell. You can sell those to those who are in authority and get them implemented. Now, this can work in both intrapreneurship, where you're practicing your entrepreneurship within the confines of an organization, or entrepreneurship, where you're starting your own enterprise. But I found out that if you lack innovation and resourcefulness, sooner or later you're going to be redundant. So I've defined innovation. It's new, useful ideas that you do not only come up with, but you promote and implement. Resourcefulness is making optimum use of what you've got. No one has got adequate resources, nobody in the world. But the people who succeed are the people who take those same resources you complain about and they maximize on them. So if you can be innovative and resourceful, we say you're being enterprising. And that is one sure way of excelling despite the chaos that we are facing. You need to maximize your value. How do you maximize your value? You need to develop scarce in demand skills. Now that is key. You do that, you're sellable anyway. It doesn't matter where, because you've got skills that are in demand. People need those skills. And if those skills are scarce, then you will be wanted, you will be hunted. They will seek after you. Some people say, oh, I'm in this company, they don't pay me well. You know why they don't pay you well? Because you don't have scarce in demand resources. You are dispensable. Are we together? You are dispensable. And I can say this, frankly, because I'm a consultant. I don't have a paycheck coming at the end of the month. I have to prove to people that I'm useful to their organization in order for them to engage me. And I've been doing that for about 13, 14, now 17, 18 years now. So develop scarce in demand skills. And I use the acronym CASH there. The K stands for knowledge. What new, useful, scarce in demand knowledge are you acquiring? The A is for attitude. To what extent is your attitude enhancing your scarce and in demand skills? Because there's also demand for people with a positive attitude. If you've got an attitude of innovation and resourcefulness, in other words, if you've got an enterprising attitude, you are in demand, right? Because there aren't that many people who have got that attitude. So S stands for skills. Skills are about delivering, doing, actioning. What is it that you can actually do practically, rather than just telling people I've got a chain of degrees, I've got a master's, I've got a doctorate? Can you prove beyond any reasonable doubt that you're able to deliver something that offers value beyond and above the mediocre, the average, the ordinary? The H stands for habits. At first we make our habits, then our habits make us. To what extent are your habits enhancing your capacity to be marketable? To what extent are your habits supporting that development of scarce in demand skills? So you can look at that CASH acronym to assess yourself. Honestly, objectively, what knowledge, attitude, skills, habits do I have that make me a resource that is wanted, that make me, or that can position me as somebody possessing scarce and in demand skills? Next, you need to read and follow trends. Right now, as we speak, there are businesses that have been making a ton of money from the current situation, simply because of the trend, where we are moving. Maybe they happen to be in the right place at the right time or in the right industry. For example, Zoom. Zoom made a ton of money. We are using Microsoft Teams. It's also making a lot of money for Microsoft. We can talk about Netflix, for example. I think their membership grew by like 60%, unprecedented in 2020, as a result of people sitting at home and ordering movies. So look at the trends that are happening and then position yourself. Read and follow the trends. Don't try and go against the trends, because you simply can't. You will lose. That's it. So look at the trend. What is happening? What are the trends? Where are things going? One of the trends that I found interesting is that I bought something online that I realized I didn't like. I wrote an email to the company that sold the product to me. It was a software product. Within 24 hours, they'd refunded me without any questions asked. And I'm like, whoa, right. And guess what? Our companies here in Zimbabwe are competing against those companies in the US and anywhere else. If you get that kind of customer service, would you go anywhere else where you just say, listen, your policy says that you give refund within 30 days if somebody is unsatisfied. I'm not satisfied with this product. I want my money back. And they don't ask any questions within 24 hours. Does that make good business sense? Of course it does. But what are the trends there in terms of customer service? What are the trends in the world in terms of digitalization? And how are you placing yourself? You need to self-promote. So write articles about yourself. Position yourself as an expert in your area. That's what it boils down to. Right now, I think most of you, when you are carrying out an interview and you get people applying, you will Google those people. You'll find out their profile. You might even see embarrassing things. Some of us do crazy things, not realizing that you cannot rub anything that you put online. It's permanently there because it's replicated on millions of servers throughout the world. But self-promote. You need to do things that paint you in good light, that provide help, support to people. And you need to shamelessly, but valuably, write about yourself or share what you have with the world. And the internet is there. That's what it's there for. So if you're going to grow in your career, if you're going to be recognized as an authority, you need to start sharing whatever you know with the world. Finally, you need diversified multiple sources of income. Robert Kiyosaki, in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, talks about having assets. An asset is anything that you have that generates ongoing positive cash flows. This is not the definition according to accountants. So excuse me for using that, but this is a practical definition. What is it that you have right now that is generating cash flows? Your house that you're staying in is not an asset unless it's generating cash flows. Your car is not an asset unless it's generating cash flows. And the more cash flows you have, the more diversified they are. Well, guess what? The more secure you are, and the better you are able to accept any shocks that may come as a result of our constantly changing environment. So those are the main points that I wanted to share with you today. Me, Private Limited, think like a consultant, act like a startup, be enterprising, maximize your value, read and follow the trends, self-promote, and have diversified multiple sources of income. This brings us to the so what. So here's my question. What action will you take as a result of what we have shared today? It's okay if you say, look, there's absolutely no action for me. None of what you said struck me. None of what you said is relevant to me. I accept that. There's absolutely no way that everything that I say can strike a chord with every person that I talk to. And then I would like you to rate me. Give me a rating, either an A or an F in the chat. And I'll ask whoever has access to the chat. For some strange reason, I'm not seeing the chat. Whoever has access to the chat to read for me just before I close and share with me what's being said in the chat. I'm also kindly requesting you to share with me some feedback in terms of the action you're going to take. So I've created an online survey, just a simple form with 11 short questions. tinyurl.com/ACCA Zim If you go to that link that is there, you can fill in those questions, which will help me get feedback. But also, I'm promising that I will follow up on whatever action you have written to give you one-on-one coaching for a limited amount of time to help you take action and also to answer any questions you might have one-on-one, provided you complete that link. tinyurl.com/ACCA Zim Action. If you'd like me to send that link to you, my number is on screen. You can send me a WhatsApp message on that number, 0773-056-736 if you're in Zimbabwe, or +263 at the beginning if you're out of Zim, and I will respond to you. Right, I've taken longer than I thought I would take, but at this point, I will take in the questions. May I please have the questions? Am I still connected?
Yes, John, are you still connected? You're still connected.
Awesome.
I think people are trying to see if they can access that link.
Okay, great.
And take at least one action.
You should have never attempted to define an asset.
I didn't attempt. I gave you the definition of Robert Kiyosaki. That's a disclaimer. It's not from me. Please go and raise this with Robert Kiyosaki. Right. No questions? Either I've completely baffled people or it's been so disengaging that everybody has left, but I can still see people's names. Even a comment. May I have some comments? Or did people give me a rating? Are there any A's or F's in the chat? I'm tough-skinned enough to accept the feedback.
So far, they are all A's.
So far, they're all A's. Okay. Either people are really nice or they are going to take at least one action, which is fantastic. You know, it's not really about whether you liked what I said or not, or whether you like me or whatever. It's about action. If you're going to take action, hallelujah. But if there's no action you're going to take, well, sorry, because we just wasted 45 minutes of your precious life.
There are a couple of questions in the chat box.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Please read them out for me. I can't see the chat.
Okay, so we'll take out the questions for you. Before we take the questions, Arthur Mawire had his hand up. Arthur, please go ahead. Whilst we move to the questions for Jonah, we'll just take 5 minutes on the questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Arthur, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I just wanted to ask, in terms of action, there's so much information that at times I struggle to pick which one. Obviously, there are things I'm passionate about, but in order for me to take action, what must I really do? That's my question.
Okay. I think what you really must do is look at what I would call, do your cost benefit analysis. There are many things you could do, but
Yes.
which ones do you think will give you the biggest return in a reasonably short time?
Okay.
Which actions or which areas, maybe you're looking at investing. You know, one of the things that everybody's got a side hustle. You need a side hustle in Zimbabwe, right? So you look at the side hustles and do your homework. Check it out first. What, you know, the thing I like about most accountants is that they're very pragmatic. And I found in many cases when I'm excited with a marketing person, we've got an idea, is the accountant who brings us back to earth and he says, hey, wait a minute, where exactly are we going to get the money from, right?
Yeah.
What are the assumptions we've made? So I'll say, don't suffer from paralysis by analysis.
Okay.
Choose something that you're going to start with. And guess what? Failure is not fatal. Right? That's the important thing. So be ready to fail. But if you fail, fail in such a way that you can get up. In other words, don't go and gamble where you're saying, no, this is likely to work. So let me take my house and let me go and get a loan and use my house as collateral because I believe in this idea. The idea is untested. Maybe you don't have much experience running your own business because it's a different kettle of fish from running somebody else's business for that, right?
I'm
So
following.
find something practical that you can start with, but start small. Most people, and this is a key secret, most people overestimate what they can do in the short term and underestimate what they can do in the long term.
Oh, yeah.
So start something that will give you what I call low-hanging fruits, just to give you fuel encouragement. You can have some initial results from it, but make sure it's something that you can continue investing in your time, your energy, your effort, and over time, it will give you great results. I particularly recommend initiatives where you know that your effort, your results are closely, directly linked to your effort. Not where you're doing guesswork, where you're saying, well, you know what, let me just give an example. Excuse me if this rubs people the wrong way, but it's just an example. Where you say, okay, I'm gonna delve into cryptocurrency. And you know very well it depends on factors that are beyond your control, whether or not the cryptocurrency appreciates or depreciates. So that's not an action that to me is an advisable one to start off with. If you've got excess resources and you've got sufficient money put aside and inflows, then you can dabble with things like that, which are more like gambling. But I would say start with something where you are leveraging on your efforts, on your knowledge, on your investment.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Another question?
Thank you, Jonah, for that. We have Elliot, whose hand is up. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So mine is a question. So I think going back to the presentation, I'm more of a purpose-driven person. And there are two kind of things that I've battled with, especially when I'm confronted with external factors that tend to go against the plans that have been made. Like, for example, number one, how do you deal with the situation? How do you make adjustments? How do you easily make adjustments? I think that's one of the things that I've struggled with, that I want to achieve A, B, C, D, and E, and there are external factors that obviously requires you to make adjustments. That's number one. Number two, issues of those that are supporting you. Either they take time to see the point, they take time to see the vision. How do you deal with those kind of situations in the implementation process?
Great. Let me give you very two short answers, but you can contact me and we can discuss this later. Number one, when it comes to making adjustments, a lot of us try to bite more than we can chew. I used to give an example. Way back in 2013, I started a habit of doing press-ups, press-ups, exercising. And on the first day of the year, I did one press-up. On the second day, I did 2. On the third day, I did 3. By the end of the year, I could do 365 press-ups non-stop. But I couldn't do that on day 1. So it's the same with adjusting. Don't try and just, do some revolutionary change all of a sudden. Start with small steps. You can Google the concept of the slight edge, EDGE. There's actually a book, I can't remember who wrote it, or tiny habits. Google those terms, and they'll tell you the most consistent way of changing your habits is by taking it one small step at a time. The key word is consistency. And then number 2, when it comes to those who are close to you, getting them to work with you, etc., the biggest challenge is by far your spouse. You need to bring your spouse on board, because when your spouse is not seeing things the way you're seeing, then there's a problem. So it's really a matter of persuasion, and also it's really a matter of leading by example. I've met a lot of people who say, you know what, my wife is not supportive, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at that person, they've not been consistent in what they're doing. They've not been able to convince the other person. And the art of persuasion is about looking at the best interests of both parties. So in order for you to convince me, you must tell me, show me, demonstrate to me how what we are planning to do will be of benefit to me. And then you encourage me. You can encourage me using positive reinforcement. When I take small steps towards supporting and assisting your idea, praise me, right? Because once you do that, it psychologically hacks into my psyche. I feel good about trying. Whereas most of the time, we don't like trying new things because it's getting us out of our comfort zone and we're likely to be clumsy and to make a mistake. So in a nutshell, that's how I would respond to that.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Very incisive. I've taken some notes from there. I see a question here from Gaylord, which sort of links to the question you were responding to. He says, #self-promote. What are the practical steps to have a sustainable self-promoting drive and building a good personal brand in today's ever-changing world?
Fantastic. So let me give you a couple of things you can start doing. One, look at the people that you consider to be role models for you. Maybe people who have achieved what you haven't achieved. Find their social media presence. A lot of people do have, occasionally posting on Facebook, on LinkedIn, etc. Start commenting on their posts, right? Start commenting on it, positively commenting, obviously, insightful, right? Simple, you can do that. And it doesn't have to be many people. Number 2, you can come up with a blog. Have a blog of your own, right? So a blog is really a personal space on the web where you write whatever you want to write. But make sure whatever you're writing is something that paints you in good light and that is helpful to other people, right? You can Google right now about how to start a blog. It's very simple. Number 3, you can just use ordinary media channels like writing stories. I write motivational content that I post on LinkedIn, that I post on Instagram, that I post on Facebook. And it's important, especially as a consultant, because when people get my proposal, let's say they want to have a team building or strategic planning session, they Google and find out information about me. I even have people who call me because they went online and found me. So you can start with those things. Find the people that you consider to be role models, take along to them, read what they say, comment on it, like what they're liking, share it. You already begin to make influence on other people. Write, set up your own blog, and you can do this for free. Just Google setting up a free blog and you'll get many resources. And start writing articles for your own social media presence that are useful, relevant, and that can get people to learn something. Right, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonah. The last question that we will take today because of time is, how do you keep passion burning in the face of adversity?
Oh, fantastic. Right. There are 3 power questions that I ask myself. Now, remember this. Whenever you make a decision, you're asking a question and answering it. What makes us happy or unhappy are not the circumstances in which we find ourselves. is the conversation that we have concerning those circumstances. So somebody gets fired and they say, this is the end of the world. What am I going to do? Am I going to die? And that influences their actions, their outlook, their emotions. Somebody else thinks, you know what? I've always wanted to be a business owner. This is my chance. That influences the energy they have, etc. So looking at the situation we have right now, in order to sustain yourself, you need to have positive conversations with yourself, self-talk. I ask myself 3 power questions. Number 1, I ask myself, what am I excited about? Normally I do this in the morning. And when you think about what you're excited about, you start feeling excited, right? And then I ask myself, what am I looking forward to? So in the next hours, days, weeks, months, years, what am I looking forward to? You cannot feel miserable when you're looking forward to something. And then I ask myself, what am I excited about right now? Or rather, the last question is, what am I grateful for? Just gratitude. Gratitude is the antithesis of misery. You can't have misery and gratitude coexisting. And then you look at what you're achieving. Right, with the effort I'm doing, what is the success that I'm achieving? It's your responsibility to celebrate your success. Think about all the successful people in the world. You never hear of them complaining about the things that are not working. They're constantly talking about their plans, about what they want to do, about what they've achieved so far. It doesn't matter who, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos. You never hear them go on a misery trip about what's not working. And there are many things they fail at, right? So here is the thing. Celebrate your successes. Focus on those successes, but learn from your mistakes. Learn from those failures. Don't ignore them. Don't rationalize. You should be able to say, I failed, with the same amount of conviction that you say, yes, I've succeeded. And from there you learn. But focus your attention on celebrating your successes, maximizing those successes, replicating those successes, and making sure you discover what are the factors that led me to success? What can I do to achieve more successes? And what are the lessons that I learned from my failures? And what can I do in future so that I'm making original mistakes? I'm not making the same mistakes over and over again.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Thank you so much for that coaching. We totally appreciate. There are a number of comments, but most of the comments, people are saying awesome, and they are happy, and they're also commenting on the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and they're saying it's a very powerful, transformative book, just as transformative as the presentation that you've made to us. We are really grateful. So because of time, we are going to call upon Mr. Chatima to give closing remarks, and then I will just say a few words after him. Mr. Chatima, over to you.
Okay.